So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a new TAUS webinar series on the language data market. My name is Annemai van der Meer, and I'll be hosting today's session where we focus on the business aspect of the language data market. In our world, here at TAUS, language and translation is primarily data. And for the past couple of years, our global translation industry has slowly been transforming into a data industry. So I wanted to share, before we go into the speakers' presentations, share a little bit more about our data journey. So TAUS was founded in 2005, which was a year before Google Translate was launched. And we had a clear vision that the dream of automated translation would finally become a reality. So in 2008, we launched the TAUS Data Cloud. That was an industry-shared repository of translation memory data, which helped many of the early adapters of SMT back then to improve their engines. Well, in between, so from 2008 to 2018, we were very busy on the quality side. But then in 2018, we launched a new technique, matching data, which helps to customize and clean corpora. And then last year we launched the TAUS Human Language Project, which is a new platform to create data with native speaker communities, and especially for low resource languages. And now, 12 years after the first TAUS Data Initiative, we're getting ready to launch the very first data marketplace. This is an EC-funded collaboration with FBK Trento Translated and TAUS. And it's, for us, we feel it's a good step towards our grand vision of a universally accessible language data network. So ahead of this launch, we are going to organize a series of webinars with different stakeholders about this emerging language data market. We're seeing an increased need for more and better language data for machine translation. New domains, new locales, also new data services and NLP model training, and many large and smaller providers have already tapped into this new market. So in today's webinar, we have invited 3 of the large and global language service providers to talk with us about the business aspect of the language data for machine translation. So who are the players, where are the opportunities, what kind of data and services are in demand, and why? So I'm excited to announce our speakers for today. We have Jonas Ryberg, I forgot, Head of Pactera Edge Digital Globalization Services. We have Jamie Punishil, CMO at Lionbridge, and Olga Bergovaya, who is the VP of AI Innovation at We Localize. And with me also are 2 co-moderators, Konstantin Dranj and Andrew Jocelyn. So while we look at the agenda for today's session, I also wanted to launch a quick poll with you to see who we have in the audience. So let's see. The poll is: are you a participant in the data market? So maybe you already buy data, maybe you're selling, maybe you are buying and selling, or maybe you are not active at all. And let's see, because I've lost my slide deck now. Are you still seeing my slides? Can somebody confirm that?
No.
No.
Yeah, the poll is on the screen actually.
Okay.
Poll's up.
Yeah. So let me close the poll again and walk with you through the agenda. I think I'll share the results here first. So we have a lot of people who are not yet active in the data market, some sellers, some buyers, and also some who buy and sell. So that's good to know. And also I think for the speakers to, oops, sorry about that. I don't know where my slide deck went. Let me, let's see, sorry about that. Okay. I'm sorry, guys, I don't see my, oh, here I am. But I realized that I actually wasn't even sharing my screen yet. Wait. Okay. Are you able to see? Why does it keep doing this? Are you able to see my screen now?
Yep.
Should have a cover slide for all this. Yeah? Okay, good. Yep. So, agenda for today, we are first going to listen to Olga, who will talk more about the data trends and needs, especially from a relocalized point of view. Then we will hear from Jonas about the data collection, production models, and we'll touch a little bit upon the technology as well. Then it's up to Jamie to talk more about the data needs and perspectives from Lionbridge side. We'll have some discussion, Q&A in between. So if you do have any imminent questions while Olga, Jonas, or Jamie are speaking, don't hesitate to post them here in the question box. If there is something interesting and fitting to the talking points, we will bring them up, open your microphone, and handle the question on the spot. And the second half of the webinar will be more about the future. So where are the new skills, the new tools, the new technologies? And we'll hear from Andrew some of the initial results from a research that Taus has been doing for a language data for AI report. So I think without further ado, Olga, I'm going to hand over the microphone to you.
Okay, Anima, and I hope my connection behaves, because the second you said microphone to you, I got a notification that my connection went.
Well, we heard the first bit. Is anyone else also not hearing Olga anymore?
Yeah, I can't hear.
Yeah.
Yep, no sound.
No.
As
Yeah.
if on cue, she disappeared.
Yeah.
It's Murphy's Law.
Pass the microphone to Olga. Well, Olga, while you figure out what's going on, I might move on to Jonas first then in this case.
Teach the data collection.
Oh.
Huh? Can
You're
you guys
back.
hear me?
Yeah, no, we can hear you now again. So let's.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It should be fine.
Yeah.
I get all the bars on the internet, so it should be okay. And I'm pretty much sitting on the router, so it should be fine. So anyways, what I was saying is I'm not aware of any, if we say that data annotation and generation and collection is an industry in its own, I've never seen in the language industry anything that's been growing at the pace at which data collection, annotation, and generation actually has been growing. So based on the research, and I did quite a bit of research relying on what we have researched within WeLocalize. I looked at Forrester, I looked at MIT reviews. What it was estimated at in 2019 between the key players, and I think we know who the key players are, we are looking at about 1 billion around data collection and generation. Now, what is projected to be at around 2024, maybe early 2025, is about 12 billion. And the growth goes about like this between various applications that I'll talk about in a minute. So just as an example, and probably Jamie and probably Jonas, you will confirm that, and Andrew and probably Anima as well, as of right now, the majority of buyers, at least where we see the majority of growth falls in the conversational AI. And then from there, probably search engine, relevance training, and from there,
Olga, we are missing a few.
The machine translation applications and other NLP applications. But just for the reference, the global conversational AI market in 2019 was valued at roughly US 3.89 billion.
Olga, I think we do have issues with your microphone because we are missing some parts a little bit.
Okay, let me do this. Let me stop sharing the webcam. It was perfect when we rehearsed, but let me stop sharing my webcam and see if it helps. How about now?
Yes, we can hear you good now.
Yeah, it should be fine. I'm not going to steal bandwidth to the webcam. And I apologize again, as you know, when we rehearsed, it was perfectly fine. So just looking at the market size, and Anima, interrupt me. I'll try adjusting as as we go, I'll try to see if moving the router around helps any. So again, looking at the market size, obviously that alone opens infinite opportunities. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what are the possible data purchasing scenarios as they are now, and where it is likely to go within the next few years? Now, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know where it is going to go from there because the AI landscape changes daily. But as of right now, what we see is various scenarios of dialogue management. And as I said, predominantly the buyers, as we see it now, work in the conversational AI space, especially now with different support scenarios where human support more and more gives way or is augmented by conversational AI support, such as bots, conversational bots, response bots. Voice assistant and ASR would be the second area of application where you both collect and annotate voice data or written data in speech modality. Then various search applications, training MT engines, predominantly for new domains that were not covered previously by MT, and long tail languages that do not have domain specialization, because obviously the likes of Google and the likes of Microsoft are providing sufficient long tail language coverage, and now with zero shot or one shot opportunities, all possible scenarios for different cross language translations are possible. And then there is a plethora of other NLP applications such as sentiment analysis, text summarization, that also call for both multilingual and monolingual data. Let's go to the next slide, please. Are we good, Anima, sound-wise?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, now buyers, there was the urban myth that the buyers are technology giants. Now the reality as we see it from localized perspective and from talking to the peers, the buyers actually are anyone who implements one of the scenarios that I just mentioned. And these are the key industries. This is actually the slide that was generated by our business development organization that have extensively studied the market and are in conversations with the buyers or the buyers that we already work with. So these are the key industries that we identified. But again, as we said, it can be virtually any industry that are deploying, say, a chatbot or say an ASR/TTS system. So that can be e-commerce, that can be telecom. Healthcare and life sciences are actually avid users of various AI scenarios that are data consumers. That equally applies to media, entertainment, technology. And then what's interesting, our clients would actually be also providing AI services that require data to their customers. So they would often also serve as a channel for generating and supplying data. Now, what's great is this is not a one-off gig. What we see also, because AI/NLP applications are relatively young, what we see happening is the data is collected, the models are created, then it goes into deployment, but even in deployment is still experimentation stage. The learnings are derived, then the model itself is rescoped, repeat, and then we go into the maintenance mode. So from commercial perspective, since this webinar focuses on commercial perspective, once you enter this loop as a supplier, basically that warrants a long-term collaboration. Let's go to the next slide, and I think that's going to be the last one. Yep. And now, why an LSP? We do know that there are players that started from providing data, but we also do see, we have Pactera, we have Lionbridge, we have Localize in the room. We all have become key players and key suppliers in the data generation, data annotation, data curation field. What do LSPs bring to the table? First of all, we do know how to manage a scalable global supply chain. And we do, over the years, we have learned how to work with professionals of various skill set. From handling UGC translation, user-generated content translation, we do know how to build and manage crowds. But then from handling much more complex tasks, we also do know how to build and manage computational linguistics task force. And I would imagine that further in this webinar, we'll talk equally about simpler data generation and annotation tasks, and also more complex where you find yourself creating and adapting grammars or providing very complex, say, taxonomies or part of speech tagging or named entity recognition tagging, which calls for really computational linguistics background. Now, as LSPs, we do know how to react fast, and we do know how to build, be it corpora or provide translations of varied linguistic complexity under very aggressive tasks. And in my previous turnaround time, and in my previous slide, I said that we often collaborate with our clients during modeling and experimentation phase. And you do need to be able to be very flexible, very agile, and react fast, and LSPs know how to do that. Now, as key players in MT space, all of us are, we have put years into developing and training MT engines. And we've learned a lot about corpus creation, corpus management, and subsequently, we can sell this skill. And there is one bullet that I just thought about after I sent my slides to Anamai. We bring internationalization expertise. Different languages behave completely different within AI training models, be it everything, I mean, syntax, script, the way transliterations are handled, and no one but an LSP would actually know how to handle those languages. And what we're learning, data scientists within organizations would quite often not have experience managing those languages, especially languages like from different glyph sets within their models. And this is where we bring priceless expertise to them. So this is my little pitch. And from here, I hand the microphone off back to Anamai.
Yes.
And I'm glad the sound came back.
Thank you so much, Olga. This is a very good intro into our topic today. So now it's time for Jonas to talk a little bit more about the data collection and production models, and maybe also answer the question as to why buy data instead of manufacturing or crawling it. So Jonas, on to you.
Sure, thank you, Anamai. I'll give that a shot. I'll try to answer that, and I hope that my sound and camera works all right.
Yes.
Great. So I would, first of all, I would definitely agree with Olga. It's become a substantial market. There's a lot of activity, and it's growing very quickly. We've seen pretty significant growth year over year over the past few years. It's interesting that Olga mentioned that machine translation was a good starting point for relocalize. For us, it was speech recognition, and we started working with one of the early speech recognition systems with transcription, generating data sets for training purposes there. And then it's evolved from that, and it really covers the full set of AI implementations for us today. And it's all about data, right? So every minute we all generate data online, be it through online search, buying stuff online, using social media, watching movies, series on Netflix or Amazon Prime, whatever it is, right? It all generates data. And companies like Google, Facebook, Netflix, and so on obviously use this data to fuel their AI and ML models and optimize how they work and what they offer all of us in for example, Netflix recommendation engines and things like that. Thing is that this data only gets actionable with a human in the loop in a lot of cases. So that's where we add value, be it through annotation, labeling, curation, or translation for that matter, in the case of language data. To your question on why companies buy data instead of just using crawled data, I would say it's about this old rule of garbage in, garbage out, right? You need good data to train these engines, and crawl data is often messy. Having said that, crawl data is often the starting point for buying data, because buying data could mean that you annotate it, or you curate it somehow and label it, and or translate it to make it actionable and clean it up, structure the data for training purposes. If we look at language data specifically and the engagements that Pactera Edge has in this space, we have observed some clear, distinct production models that often are similar across engagements. And looking at the slide, you have this scale starting at the high end from high effort, high quality, and obviously higher cost. And then moving down that scale, you see different production models. Starting at the higher end, so we have human translated data sets. So this is basically you have full control, you have human professional translators work with the source data, translated into the specific target languages. It's very important not to use machine translation here, so it's pure play, high-end professional human translation to create these goal sets, or basically the best possible quality data sets. Of course, this is expensive, so there are different models to try to generate good data without necessarily incurring that highest possible cost. Moving down that scale, the next best thing in terms of quality would be having the machine translation output post-edited. So you got machine translated post-edited data sets, which can also generate really good high quality data sets. But the risk is that you reinforce issues that you might have in the machine translation output unless the post-editors catch all of them, and that's potentially difficult. But you can increase velocity and reduce costing, still achieve really good high quality data sets by using this model. And then moving down that scale, you're moving into things like using managed crowdsourcing for translation. You can still generate good quality data sets, but potentially a somewhat lower level of confidence. And then using crowdsourcing, that would be most of the rest of that scale, different types of tasks, all the way down to just annotating the machine translation output, where you would have pretty straightforward production models where you would, for example, compare translation A and translation B and indicate which one is the best, and then you can use that as a feedback loop to training the engine. Olga mentioned the LSPs as suppliers. I just wanted to add a couple of points regarding that. So the supplier side and the sectors that we see in the industry. Certainly, being here with Lionbridge and We Localize and ourselves, Pactera Edge, we are LSPs. We have that legacy, decades of experience in localization and language services, which helps a lot. I totally agree with Olga that global reach, the quality and program management framework. So that's a clear, distinct sector in this language data business. The other part would be your startup type players. So you have your typical Silicon Valley or Seattle-based tech companies that have moved into this space and started in this space, and not necessarily only for language data, but AI data in general, across computer vision to voice and language data. For example, Scale AI would be one company that is fairly advanced in that space. They're generally well funded, have good technology, but would not necessarily have the same global reach as the LSP type players in this space. If I look at Pactera Edge, I would say that we were a bit of a combination of both. We're definitely an LSP in the sense that we've been doing localization, translation, and language services work for a long time, but we also offer other capabilities outside of globalization in the space of digital platforms and AI and ML. So that's helped us build some of the technologies that I think you need to offer these services at scale. I think my opening remark, the time for the opening remarks is out, so I leave it at that, but I'd be happy to share more on the technology later in this webinar.
Great, thanks very much, Jonas. So now on to Jamie. And Jamie, you are not using any slides, so we're excited to hear what your sort of opening statement is today.
Well, who needs slides after those beautiful slides we just saw? Just I'll just start by just adding a little bit to what Olga and Jonas has shared. You know, I think I think it's really difficult to judge the size of this market. If you read, you know, any given research report, you're going to have ranges that are all over the map. Sorry, I did turn this off. You know, ranges that are all over the map, and what you discover is every year, right, they tend to grow. I think we're all still learning exactly just how big the market is, and you know, to Olga's point, this changes every day, and new applications are conceived every day. You know, I think we look at the market probably a little bit different. But you know, I think, you know, consonant enough with what we heard. You know, there's really, you know, up to this point, you really see most of the spend, you know, from, you know, those of us that we imagine are spending lots of money. You know, we think of them as kind of the big five, you know, and it's really the big five tech companies, and sort of your next tier of that, on that is the global tech players. Again, you know, large companies that you know of or imagining are spending large dollars you know, on AI-based initiatives, and then you kind of move into this mid-sized spender. Sometimes it's tech companies, but that's where we start to see, you know, moving out of the technology space, retail, logistics, financial services, you know, a number of other places. And then you've got this, you know, we sort of think of the fourth category as the smaller spenders, or the startups. You know, we've been doing this, and you know, for a long time. I think, you know, and I'll just, you know, foot this in many ways. You know, it's the language industry itself has been dealing with AI longer than any other industry, right? I mean, you can go back to Turing, and I think some of you have heard me say this before, right? You know, both the you know, father of modern computing and the father of what, you know, we now call the AI space, and MT goes back to the 50s. And so, you know, there's probably no industry that's in a better position to understand the challenges of collecting data, creating data, curating data, annotating data, effectively, you know, constructing and manufacturing and adapting data sets, you know, both at each ends of the humans in the loop, both as we feed the initial trainings, and then as, you know, we sort of rate, review, and give feedback for optimization of those engines than this one. And you get the same kind of debates as to sort of just how natural is it for a translation or localization company to put their foot over into this space. You could make the same argument about, you know, just the difference between translation and interpretation. Obviously, there are folks who are interpretation agencies first and translation agencies second, and vice versa. But they all sit underneath that common language set. You know, I think there's a big difference, and you know, we certainly can see this in how you manage the typical translator pool in the way the industry has been constructed for much of the last, you know, 20-25 years, and crowd management. And crowd management is different. It's sophisticated. It's much faster. You know, the recruiting timelines and the specific needs. And frankly, the turnaround times look different and vastly accelerated from sort of traditional, let's call it, you know, language and localization projects. And I think, you know, we started actually not so much, you know, with the advantage of working with MT, but with really much more complex, you know, projects and annotating data, you know, going all the way back to the mid-2000s. You know, I think we probably started annotating data in, you know, 2008, you know, grammar, you know, morphological work, semantic annotation, you know, spellers, thorses, hyphenators, for, you know, all, obviously, you know, tech companies. And this has grown into a much bigger space. So I think on one hand, it's very natural for LSPs to look at this and say, this is the natural evolution of the industry. It is obviously, to Olga's point, it is probably the fastest growing segment of the industry, you know, sort of writ large. On the other hand, it is not the same as the localization business that you've been running, and it's quite a big leap that requires some new skills, some similar skills, but a whole bunch of new skills. So I think it's important that folks, as they stare at this and look at this and think about it, understand that it's not an insignificant challenge. Why don't I just pause there, Anna? I want to get into the questions and into the debate. I think we could put some nuance around the market, but I think it gets much more interesting when we get into the questions.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'll just stop sharing the screen here. Maybe the speakers can turn on the cameras again, because I think it is indeed time to go into some questions and get a discussion going on. And maybe Konstantin, would you like to kick off the conversation?
Oh, I'd really love to. Let's get first maybe some figures in. I know these presentations and opening statements were gracious and elegant, but we really skimmed on the numbers aspect of it. May I ask the panelists to give maybe some estimates? Olga already provided 1 billion, which is the whole conversational AI annotation market. Maybe we could narrow it down to the machine translation, the driving force, which is changing our industry. What do you think? As a quick poll, let's have a consensus estimate. How big is this market? This is our chance. 3 huge business leaders in the room. Can we make this? Can we make this happen? What do you think is the size of the machine translation dataset market?
You.
I'll take the first stab, but you're not going to like my answer, which is I have no idea, and we don't break it out that way. And part of that, I think because we've been doing this for so long, we just look at the entire, sort of data market as a whole. We've got a bigger number, substantially bigger than Olga's. But like I said, I mean, you could find estimates from 1 billion to 2 billion to 3 billion to 4 billion. I don't think anybody really knows. It's really large. There is a ton of work,
my question, you would probably give me a direct answer. If the answer is I don't know, all right, I can take this.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll give you a more direct. I don't think anybody knows, Konstantin. There's the thing, right? Because as more data, as more applications get used, we see more opportunities for use. And by the way, and I want to challenge, because I think it's fun on these things, more fun when we challenge it. I don't think it's just MT is changing this business, right? That's changing like one little piece of the localization flow, right? There's, how can AI be used to pre-process the content long before it even gets to, so it may not even have to go to a linguist, much less gets to a linguist. How much metadata can we wrap around that to do other more interesting processing? And that's even before you move off of just text and get into speech and video and audio and all kinds of, sort of new areas where the AI is very rapidly moving. And I think it's part of why it's so hard to size, right? But in the end, they all sit on top of a foundation of meaning, right? I have to give something meaning so that the engine can process it. So it's massive. It's bigger than any of us know.
Excellent. So the answer from Jamie was it's huge, but maybe we can get a more precise estimate.
Let me add to that quickly, Jamie. Thank you so much for saying you don't know, because I was like, okay, what if everybody does and I don't? But I would probably be in the same. I would be in the same boat. But if we use TAO's data as an example, last year we downloaded a lot in 2019, but the application of the data, as much as it's parallel corpora, it's perfect for MT engine training. But the application, even of that parallel corpora, to Jamie's point, can be way broader than just training MT engines. So I would be very cautious by even classifying TAO's data as MT data market, because just that data alone could be applied much broader. I don't know, maybe Jonas, you could.
Yeah, no, I would agree, Olga and Jamie, that it's definitely not only machine translation. The language data would be used across multiple domains. And we see that literally every engagement where we have language data engagement, they also cover speech models, for example, and you get this automated translation, speech translation these days, right? So it's very much connected into traditional machine translation or NMT. But if I want to, I'll try to play along. So if we use the 1 billion or 2 billion, whatever the size of the total market is, I would say that the language data would probably be about 10% of the total market, whatever that number is. That would be my guess. Try to give you a number.
The first brave man to give a number. Jonas, I stand with you.
Thank you.
So maybe we can, of course, you are all big players in the industry, but a question from the audience and a question that we had also thought of ourselves is how can some of the smaller players tap into this market? You know, what are your thoughts on this? Who dares to start answer that question?
How can you
I
make
started the
a
last
number
one.
of
Somebody
small
else gets it.
competitors in this, right?
Maybe I could take the first stab. I mean, even the big players, as an LSP that did the service to our offering, I would say that an LSP does not wake up one morning saying, hey, and today we're also data services provider. It takes a major overhaul of your operations, of your technology, thoughts around the work surface and the environment, management of your workforce. Just the very, like, you need to have pretty much a separate division, or at the very least a separate subgroup of project managers, as I said, like some form of computation linguistics expertise. All of it can be replicated, but it really would take time. I would not say that a smaller player would not be able to do this. Anybody would be able to do this, but small player or large player needs to be prepared for both time and money investment to enter that market. That at least would be my opinion.
Yeah. But the market is providing opportunities as well for small players, I would say,
Absolutely.
as the big tech companies sort of move into smaller niche domains or smaller locales, the long tail, right? Obviously, we work on these as well, but sometimes it's actually better to have a local small partner. Maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot a little bit here, but I would say that it definitely helps to have that local presence. And it's definitely, you need the technology. We talked about that, the scale, right? All of those things. You need investment and you need time to do that. But the biggest thing you need is a mindset change. Like, you shouldn't work with, if you collect data, you can't work with human translators, for example. So you need to look at that. What's your talent pool? And you need to start thinking about scale and being efficient and quick and so on, which we all are as well when we do localization, but it's at a completely different scale compared to at least our translation engagements. When you talk about hundreds and thousands of assets in a couple of weeks in some cases, right? But I would say for smaller players, start with a niche, find your niche, or find your long tail language and focus on that, and then experiment out of that.
To add to that, us
Yeah.
bigger players would actually be happy to collaborate with a smaller player, just the way we collaborate with a smaller player right now. To your point, Jonas, if there is a long tail language, and if there is a smaller player in the geo that was actually able to build be it a crowd, be it a more complex linguistics, data annotation, task, supply chain, fantastic. We will be the ones to come to you and say, hey, let's work together.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add, I mean, look, let's look at just the traditional space. There's 18,000 LSPs. There is plenty of space for lots of organizations of different size and capacity. You know, it does have some of the same dimensionality on very specific language or domain expertise, you know, and or application expertise. So there already are plenty of, there are new data collection only organizations and small ones. So I think we already see the same dimensionality inside of this space that you see inside of what we might think of as the more traditional LSP space. You know, and much like the difference there are projects that, you know, small companies simply can't do, and you know, you can see this where, well, you know, there'll be multiple players collecting data for the same application, some very large, some very small, again, for very specific use cases. So this is, and it's part of why, Konstantin, I press so hard on not putting a size to the market, partially because I think it's so big, it doesn't matter. It's huge, and there's room for lots of different, it's huge and growing. And so there's room for lots of folks. It's not as if there are, 3 projects on the table and we're all fighting for the same scraps and taking price to zero on that. So I think it's just, but the points both that Olga and Jonas made are right. This is really difficult. If you look at the capabilities of our, I can only speak to our team, from today versus the mid 2000s, it's multiple step functions of complexity in the kind of talent you need, the crowd management that you need, etc., if you're going to support some of these much larger programs. But again, just like starting a localization agency, you start with a couple of people, you start small, you pick one thing, you solve it well, and you try to grow into it.
All right, let me ask you a different question. If you don't want to size this market, if it's so big. I conducted a survey of many trainers of machine translation engines, and some of them coming from big corporations like Sony or Uber or eBay and so on. And the result was that none of them buy data, practically none. And the way I see this from talking to the pundits in the market, most of the money that you 3 large important players in this space generate, it comes from the Facebooks, the Googles, the Microsofts of the world, building on-demand data sets, probably conversational, like Olga started, conversational is king. However, for the hundreds or even thousands, I used to have 5 maybe machine translation specialists at my network. Now it's about 50. Tomorrow is going to be 500 machine translation specialists. Every LSP is going to have machine translation specialists. Many in-house language teams will have machine translation specialists. Will they buy data from any of you? Or if they buy data, will they do so through some kind of platform? I thought that the marketplace model, the one, for example, for which Taos is going, would be interesting until I saw quite a few of these marketplaces close up. The recent closure in September was from this Chinese company, TMX Mall, which develops ECAD. So all of the money is in demand, very little in marketplace. Just recently, I discovered one contrary example. Fleeto, the Korean provider of data, they could generate and they could grow this market. They have crowd providing the data sets, and then they sell the data sets to big players. My question is there a niche in the market, a need for a product or an offering which could transform this, go from 3 cents a word, 7 cents a word, where you guys sell data sets, to a much lower price, so that hundreds or even thousands of machine translation trainers could become buyers, right? So today we had only a few buyers in the room, maybe 10, maybe a little bit more. What if tomorrow we could have 100 buyers in the room? What needs to happen? What kind of offering should appear on the market to make this possible? I think it was a long question, but probably interesting. What do you think, Jamie? Olga, be honest.
To keep your answers very short and to the point, though, so it's going to make it even harder.
Can I answer in 1 sentence?
Please.
Okay, uncovered domain, long tail. That's it. I'm done.
Perfect. Any other thoughts, Jonas?
No, I would agree. There is for sure a market. I think there's an opportunity as these companies go beyond the immediate sort of common use domain or whatever it is, right? So these niche markets. I think the fact that these TMX marketplaces haven't really worked is mainly due to issues around ownership, right? Who actually owns the data sets. But if I look at what we're doing, and I'm sure it's the same for Lionbridge and we localize, we generate a lot of data in these projects where we annotate data or collect data that we don't necessarily sell, to our clients because of diversity reasons or for whatever reason, right? That we have this excess data that will generate data sets that we can put on the market. So there will naturally be a market created as this overall market grows as well. So that would be my answer. I think there is an opportunity.
Anything to add, Jamie? You're on mute, I think, Jamie. We cannot hear you at least.
Sorry, I had the phone and the thing both muted. So look, I think the part of this has to do with sort of where we are in the maturity curve frankly, we're still maturing MT, right, and much less some of these other applications. And there's still debate. Can you use common data pools? Do we need unique data pools? Can data pools produce different outcomes? Because of course, every business application is trying to differentiate itself in some way. I want to speak in my brand voice. I need to speak to this domain and do it in a way that because each player speaks to the domain differently. This in translation memories. It's not a lot different over in this other universe. I think because we're so immature, therefore the data market is also immature because we haven't hit that sort of plateau on the core applications where we're still differentiating just on sort of the core base. So I think it's just too early. It's too early to know. But clearly there's got to be a marketplace for this, right? And it will be in some of these places that are harder and beyond the core. But part of it is we just don't even know yet because we're still moving up that S curve just on core AI applications.
Great. Well, thank you all.
If we go to those domains, I just wanted to follow up a quick one. For example, if we follow up with Olga's suggestion with long tail domains, what kind of offering could cover those domains? Shall it be the crowd, which makes the data sets? Should it be the academia? Who can supply the data which would be good enough for those long tail?
Actually, this was a two-part sentence. I guess I rushed. I told us to. It was either on domains fully covered, which is what Jonas spoke to, or long tail languages. And as we localize, for instance, as we build our own engines for our customers, and often the requests are like some of the languages I have not heard of before. If there is an offering that covers corpora for those languages, that would be great, even if they're a general domain. The other axis would be, what if there is a domain that is not traditionally covered outside of the traditional, say, IT, travel, hospitality? For instance, life sciences MT gets more and more introduced into the life sciences space. So if there's corpora in life sciences, now what model would we go with? Maybe not as much per word market space, probably would be more interested in, okay, here is the corpus with this many tokens, here is the price, and then we'd probably go with that rather than the marketplace per word model. That would probably be of more interest. So
just to build on that, Konstantin, I guess two thoughts. One is I think it's dangerous for everybody to get too wedded to the MT view of the universe. As you get beyond just pure MT for some of these other applications, it's quite different. And so then being wedded to per word as a mental model, which is a challenge enough for us inside of localization, never mind, as you move into some of these other things. And I just, for example, I happen to see, two proposals recently for a project, right? And there's, you propose at the per word rate more traditionally, and then there's, really training the component. How do I train? I'm just going to train this chatbot in German. It's not a per word model. It's I'm training this component, and which is quite different. So this is the other really interesting thing is I think we're gonna see entirely new pricing models, which have, some of which have been dancing around the traditional LSP space, and some of which are unique to this particular universe where we're just living in a different layer of the data, right? We're living at that metadata layer, we're living at that annotation layer, we're training or creating components. It's substantially different.
Yeah. Well, we're already moving a little bit into the future discussion. So I think it's time now to ask Andrew to share a little bit on the research that we've been doing at Taos. So I'm going to share my screen again, and Andrew, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, after that, I think it's pretty clear that we're dealing with something extremely interesting, probably a sort of identified flying object, which is looks as if it might well change radically quite a number of issues in the language industry and the ambitions of the industry. And as we will realize, we don't know how big this is, but there are lots of tracks showing the way, it seems, towards something quite interesting. Now, at TAS, we picked up on this and we decided to do a kind of report on the state of play and some of the issues going forward, without obviously giving any useful market data. As you have just heard, it's very hard to put a figure on anything, and probably not the right time to do this. But it is interesting to see what, as it were, the market or the community thinks a little bit about the possibility of a move towards much greater embrace of data as a functional and critical step in what we think of as translation. So we've been talking to people and doing a little bit of surveying, and here are some of the findings which go from very sort of basic ideas about what data is for different, mainly LSBs, and where it might go. Now, we probably got information from about 200 companies, and about 50% around that were interested in, let's call it, data manufacturing practice. That means something to do with data annotation, making data that's relevant for the training of AI machine learning systems and so forth. So of, say, 200, 250 companies out of the 17,000 that Jamie referred to in the industry, about 50% are somehow involved in or have been involved in the last 2 to 3 years. And 2 years seems to be the main thing. So we're dealing with a new phenomenon, obviously, and we're looking forward. Out of those 50-odd percent, most of them are likely not to think of the future as being a new business sector. So only about half of them probably feel that out of this potential work, we might do a bit here, a bit there, that their future might lie in a particular business sector we could call language data in AI. So that's the state of play at the moment there. Second point about what we found, and this is obviously evident from what we've just heard much more richly from the panel, is that there's a huge range of different services that are on offer or have been asked for in both text and speech media across the industry. And they really do range from some asking for some lists of words about X in a language to correcting pronunciation or recognizing pronunciations in speech streams to good old evaluation of existing translations or something like that. So the actual range of services matches, in a sense, what we know about the immense complexity of human language at work in translation and in all of the other spheres that are, in a sense, not necessarily dependent on translation, but associated with it. And this is largely due, of course, to the what we can call the AI-ification, the shift towards an AI version of anything to do with content, be it all the way across the media, from visual to speech and text, which in a sense is a visual medium, but basically involved with the cognition of language. So the range of services is big. How will this play out as people start thinking about perhaps offering services? this remains to be seen, and we'll look forward to some interesting mixes and matches here, because there is very little clarity at the moment. The third interesting finding, which didn't really come up in the discussion beforehand, and is maybe a minor sort of comment on the kind of things that can emerge when you ask, in fact, in general, big buyers, so big data companies, big tech, what kind of things are happening in relationship to data needs in their neck of the woods. And one of the interesting sort of data points that came out is that the skill stack is changing, as we've heard. All kinds of different skills are going to be drawn in to the new dispensation if we cover all of the areas that AI is enabling today. But one interesting point was about native language needs, as they call it, which means that we're finding that discourse in general is kind of dumbing down to native. And often non-linguists might be better people to handle some of the data management tasks, data annotation, data evaluation and manufacturing, because language is sort of becoming more demotic, more and therefore much less familiar to the more sophisticated tones and styles that translators are used to. This is a small point, but it's an interesting indication of the kind of changes that we're going to accept in the very nature of data that needs to be touched. So it's going to vastly change the whole range. I'll stop there, because very soon we'll be publishing this report, and it'll be important to see more feedback about everything that comes out of that. So thanks a lot.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And indeed, as you say, this very much confirms some of the points that Olga, Jonas, and Jamie made earlier in their opening statements. So with that, we are also almost out of time. So before we leave, I just wanted to share with you a little pitch for the data marketplace that Taos has been working on, and which will go live later this month, at the end of this month. We're going to, of course, share a lot more about this in the coming weeks, but keep an eye out for that if you are interested in participating in this new data market Q&A. We've had that already. So then the only thing left for me to say is that we are having another webinar next week where we present the Taos program for 2021. And if you are very interested in the data topic, we also have a virtual data summit scheduled for November 10 and 11. And the program is in the making, so keep an eye out for that as well. And without that, or with that said, I'd like to thank Olga, Jamie, and Jonas for your presentations today, and Andrew and Konstantin for joining me in sharing some more findings and asking questions. So thank you all, and have a great day or evening.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.